Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHS Discovery, watching the stars through the main screen. It was a normal Tuesday morning in space. His crew was busy checking their equipment and running tests on the ship's systems. They had been exploring this part of space for 3 months, looking for new planets and checking for signs of life. Jake was drinking his morning coffee when Lieutenant Amy Foster ran onto the bridge. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. "Captain, you need to see this right now," she said, her voice full of worry. "What is it, Amy?" Jake asked, setting down his coffee cup. "We have contacts on long-range sensors. Big ones. Really big ones." Jake walked over to the sensor station and looked at the screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. Dozens of massive objects were moving toward human space. They were huge, much larger than any human ship ever built. The biggest one was the size of a small city. "How long until they reach our territory?" Jake asked. 6 hours at their current speed," Amy replied. Jake hit the communications button. "All hands, this is the captain. We have unknown contacts approaching human space. This is not a drill. Battle stations." The ship's alarm began to sound. Red lights flashed throughout the corridors as the crew rushed to their positions. Jake had never seen alien ships before, but he knew these were not human. The design was completely different from anything humans had ever built. Dr. Lisa Parks, the ship's science officer, was already at her station running scans. "Captain, I'm picking up energy readings unlike anything in our database. These ships are using technology we don't understand." "Are they trying to communicate?" Jake asked. "Not yet, sir. They're just moving toward us in perfect formation." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Open a channel to Earth Command, Priority Alpha." The main screen flickered and showed Admiral Carl Hughes sitting at his desk on Earth. The Admiral was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been in charge of human space defense for 20 years. "Jake, what's your status?" the Admiral asked. "Sir, we have multiple unknown vessels approaching human space. They're massive and using advanced technology. I think we're looking at first contact." Admiral Hughes leaned forward in his chair. "Send me all your sensor data immediately." "How many ships?" "At least 50, sir. Maybe more. The largest one is over 10 kilometers long." Before the Admiral could respond, the communication system crackled to life. A new voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect English but with a strange accent. "Attention, primitive species. This is War Commander Zefek of the Kreth Empire. Your territory now belongs to us. Prepare for integration into our domain." Jake and his crew stared at the screen in shock. The voice was cold and emotionless, like someone reading a shopping list. "We are the Kreth," the voice continued. "We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have conquered 2,000 species across 40,000 worlds. You will surrender immediately or face complete destruction." The communication ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Admiral Hughes was the first to speak. "Jake, get back to Earth immediately. We need to prepare our defenses." "Yes, sir," Jake replied. But he knew it was probably hopeless. If these aliens had conquered 2,000 species, what chance did humanity have? As the Discovery turned toward Earth, the alien fleet continued its steady approach. Jake watched them on his sensors and felt a chill run down his spine. The ships moved in perfect formation, like they had done this many times before. Dr. Parks worked frantically at her station, trying to learn everything she could about the alien technology. "Captain, their ships appear to be partially biological. The hulls are made of some kind of living metal that can repair itself." "What about weapons?" Jake asked. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures. Their weapons are far more powerful than anything we have." Lieutenant Foster was monitoring communications from across human space. "Captain, they're broadcasting the same message to all our colonies. 72 hours to surrender or face annihilation." Jake clenched his fists. 72 hours. That wasn't much time to prepare for a war against an empire that had never lost a battle. The Discovery raced toward Earth at maximum speed. Behind them, the Kreth fleet continued its methodical advance. Jake knew that in 3 days everything would change. Either humanity would surrender and become slaves, or they would fight and probably die. But as he looked at his crew working at their stations, Jake felt a spark of hope. Humans had always been good at surviving against impossible odds. They had fought wars, survived disasters, and overcome challenges that should have destroyed them. Maybe the Kreth Empire was about to learn something new about the species they thought would be easy to conquer. "Amy, send a message to all human colonies," Jake ordered. "Tell them we're coming home and we're bringing a fight with us." As Earth grew larger on the main screen, Jake Morrison prepared to deliver news that would change the fate of humanity. Forever. The galaxy's greatest predators were coming, and they expected an easy victory. They were about to discover just how wrong they could be. The war room on Earth was filled with smoke and tension. Admiral Carl Hughes stood at the center of a massive table covered with star charts and battle plans. Around him sat the best military minds humanity had to offer. They had been working for 18 hours straight, and they were no closer to finding a solution. "Our weapons are useless," General Katie Bell said, throwing down a datapad in frustration. "We hit their shields with everything we have, and they don't even notice." "What about nuclear weapons?" asked Colonel Ben Clark. "Already tested," Hughes replied. "They have some kind of energy barrier that absorbs the blast completely. It's like throwing rocks at a mountain." In the corner of the room, engineer Ryan Cooper was hunched over a computer terminal. He had been studying the wreckage from the 3 human outposts the Kreth had destroyed as a demonstration. His eyes were red from staring at the screen, but he refused to take a break. "Ryan, what do you have for us?" Hughes asked. Ryan looked up from his computer. "Their technology is incredible, but I think I found something interesting. Their ships are alive." "What do you mean alive?" Bell asked. "I mean they're biological. The hull, the weapons, the engines, everything is grown, not built. The ships can heal themselves when damaged, but that might also be their weakness." Dr. Lisa Parks entered the room carrying a cup of coffee and a thick stack of papers. She had been analyzing the Kreth communications and studying everything they knew about alien biology. "I think Ryan is right," she said. "I've been studying their language patterns and biological signatures. These creatures communicate through electrical fields in their brains. If we could disrupt those fields, we might be able to confuse them." Hughes felt a tiny spark of hope. "Keep working on that. What else do we know about them?" Lieutenant Amy Foster, who had just arrived from the Discovery, spoke up. "Sir, I spent 6 hours watching their fleet movements. They fly in perfect formation and never change their tactics. It's like they're following a script." Colonel Clark leaned forward. "That's interesting. In all my years studying warfare, the most dangerous enemies are the ones who can adapt. If they're predictable, maybe we can use that against them." "How?" Hughes asked. "Guerrilla warfare. Hit-and-run attacks. Make them fight on our terms instead of theirs." Ryan suddenly stood up from his computer. "I think I found something important. Look at this." The room gathered around his terminal. On the screen was a detailed scan of Kreth ship systems. Their ships are controlled by a central nervous system, just like a living creature. But here's the interesting part. They communicate with each other using bioelectric signals. If we could jam those signals, their coordination would fall apart. Parks finished. They'd be fighting blind. Hughes felt hope growing in his chest. "Can we build something to disrupt their communications?" "Give me 12 hours and every electromagnetic engineer on Earth," Ryan said. "I think we can do it." Meanwhile, President Helen Wright was in her office having the most difficult conversation of her life. The Kreth had sent another message, and this time they included a video. War Commander Zefek appeared on her screen. He was tall and covered in dark scales. He had 4 arms and eyes that glowed with an inner fire. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding metal. "Human leader, you have 48 hours remaining. I have destroyed 3 of your settlements as a demonstration of our power. Surrender now and your species will be allowed to serve the Empire. Refuse, and we will turn your worlds into ash." The video showed the destruction of the human outposts. The Kreth ships had simply appeared, fired once, and erased entire colonies from existence. Thousands of people had died in seconds. Wright turned off the video and looked at her advisors. "Recommendations?" "We should surrender," said one advisor. "We can't fight them." No, said another. If we surrender, we become slaves forever. At least if we fight, we die as free people. Wright made her decision. Get me Admiral Hughes. Hughes appeared on her screen a few minutes later. Madam President. Carl, do we have any chance at all? Hughes was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, probably not. But my people are working on something. Give us the full 48 hours. You have it, Wright said. Send the message. We refuse to surrender. Back in the war room, the team was working frantically. Ryan and his engineers were building electromagnetic weapons designed to disrupt the Kreth bioelectric systems. Dr. Parks was developing biological weapons that might affect their alien physiology. Colonel Clark was studying every piece of video they had of Kreth ships in action. Look at this, he said, pointing to a screen. They always attack from the same angle. They always use the same formation. They've been doing this for so long that they've forgotten how to improvise. That's our advantage, Amy Foster said. They expect us to fight like every other species they've conquered. Big ships, direct attacks, conventional tactics. But we're not going to do that, Hughes said, understanding. We're going to be unpredictable. Ryan looked up from his work. The electromagnetic pulse weapons are almost ready. But we'll only get one shot at this. Once they know what we're doing, they'll adapt their shields. Then we better make it count, Hughes said. Dr. Parks made another discovery while studying the alien biology. I found something else. The Kreth have been the dominant species for so long that they've become overconfident. They don't expect real resistance anymore. Explain, Hughes said. Every species they've conquered surrendered quickly or was destroyed in conventional battle. They've never faced prolonged guerrilla warfare. They don't know how to fight an enemy that refuses to play by their rules. Colonel Clark smiled for the first time in days. Then we're going to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. As the countdown timer showed 36 hours remaining, the human team worked through the night. They were building weapons, planning, tactics, and preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of their entire species. Outside, normal people went about their lives, not knowing that in a day and a half, everything would change. Some would die, some would fight, and some would discover that humanity's greatest strength had always been their refusal to give up. The Kreth Empire was about to meet an enemy unlike any they had faced before. An enemy that would rather die, fighting, than live as slaves. An enemy that could adapt, innovate, and survive against impossible odds. The galaxy's apex predators were about to discover what happened when they picked a fight with a species that had clawed its way to the top of their own world's food chain. The Kreth invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace like dark angels of death. 50 massive warships appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system, their living hulls gleaming with an oily shine. War Commander Zefek stood on the bridge of his flagship, confident that this would be another easy victory. Begin the assault, he commanded. Destroy their orbital defenses first, then move to planetary bombardment. But as the Kreth fleet advanced toward Earth, they found something unexpected. The space around Earth seemed empty. No massive defense fleets waited to meet them. No orbital battle stations prepared to fire. Where are their ships? Asked Sub-Commander Vex, Zefek's second-in-command. Hiding behind their planet like cowards, Zefek replied. It matters not. We will find them and destroy them. What the Kreth did not know was that Captain Jake Morrison and his fleet were already among them. Hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids and pieces of space debris, 30 human ships waited silently. Ryan Cooper's stealth technology made them invisible to Kreth sensors. All ships, this is Morrison, Jake whispered into his radio. Wait for my signal. Remember, we only get one chance at this. The human ships were small compared to the Kreth warships, but they carried Ryan's electromagnetic pulse weapons. Each ship had been modified with the new technology, turning them into flying disruption bombs. Lieutenant Amy Foster was piloting one of the hidden ships. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady on the controls. She had volunteered for this mission knowing she might not survive. As the Kreth fleet passed through the asteroid field, Jake gave the signal. All ships execute. 30 human ships suddenly appeared from their hiding places and fired at once. The electromagnetic pulses hit the Kreth ships like invisible hammers. The alien vessels shuddered as their bioelectric systems went haywire. What is happening? Zefek roared as his ship's controls began to flicker and fail. The living hulls of the Kreth ships began to convulse. The self-repair systems that had made them nearly invincible started shutting down. Several ships lost power completely and drifted helplessly in space. But the humans weren't finished. Colonel Ben Clark led the second phase of the attack. His Marines had been waiting in stealth pods, and now they moved toward the disabled Kreth ships. "Boarding teams, go," Clark shouted. The human Marines used jetpacks to fly through space and attach themselves to the alien hulls. They cut through the living metal with plasma torches and invaded the ships from within. The Kreth had never faced boarding attacks before. They were used to fighting at long range with energy weapons. When human soldiers appeared in their corridors, they panicked. Clark and his team moved through the alien ship like ghosts. The Kreth were larger and stronger than humans, but they were also slower and less flexible. The Marines used their smaller size to their advantage, hiding in vents and attacking from unexpected angles. "Ryan, your pulse weapons worked perfectly," Clark reported over the radio. "Their ships are completely confused." "Good," Ryan replied from his command ship. "But the effect won't last long. Their systems are already starting to adapt." On Earth, Dr. Lisa Parks was monitoring the battle from mission control. "Jake, I'm seeing the Kreth ships beginning to recover. You need to move to Phase 3 now." Phase 3 was the most dangerous part of the plan. Commander Katie Bell was leading a false retreat designed to lure the Kreth fleet into a trap. Her ships appeared to run away toward Jupiter, and the aliens followed. "Cowards," Zefek snarled as he watched the human ships flee. "Pursue them! Destroy them all!" The Kreth fleet chased Bell's ships into Jupiter's asteroid belt. What they didn't know was that the humans had spent weeks preparing this area. More ships were hidden among the rocks, and the asteroids themselves had been turned into weapons. As the Kreth ships entered the belt, explosives hidden in the asteroids detonated. Massive rocks flew in all directions, smashing into the alien vessels. The Kreth shields could stop energy weapons, but they weren't designed to handle physical impacts from objects the size of buildings. "Now!" Bell shouted. "All hidden units, attack!" 20 more human ships emerged from behind asteroids and attacked the confused Kreth fleet. The aliens found themselves surrounded and unable to use their superior firepower effectively in the cluttered asteroid field. Amy Foster piloted her ship through the chaos, dodging flying rocks and alien energy blasts. She targeted the communication arrays on the Kreth ships, using precise shots to blind and deafen the enemy fleet. War Commander Zefek watched in horror as his supposedly invincible fleet fell apart around him. 12 of his ships had been destroyed, and 3 more were captured by boarding teams. His own flagship was surrounded by human vessels. "This is impossible," he muttered. "How are these primitives defeating us?" The answer came from Colonel Clark, who had just taken control of the Kreth flagship's bridge. Human Marines surrounded the alien commander, their weapons trained on him. "You made one mistake," Clark said to Zefek. "You thought we would fight like everyone else you've conquered. But humans don't give up, and we sure don't fight fair." Zefek looked around at his captured bridge crew. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system. "War Commander, this is Captain Morrison of the human fleet. Your flagship is captured, and your invasion force is defeated. I suggest you recall your remaining ships before we destroy them too." Zefek stared at the human captain on the screen. This small, weak-looking creature had somehow outsmarted the greatest military mind of the Kreth Empire. "You cannot defeat the Empire," Zefek said. "This fleet is nothing compared to our full might." "Maybe," Jake replied. "But you're not fighting the Empire right now. You're fighting us, and we're just getting started." The battle was over, but the war had just begun. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. For the first time in thousands of years, the Kreth Empire had been defeated in battle. On worlds across the galaxy, enslaved species looked up at the stars and dared to hope. If the humans could beat the Kreth, Maybe freedom was possible after all. But in the depths of space, Supreme War Leader Korthak received the news of his subordinate's defeat. His rage was terrible to behold. He immediately began assembling the largest fleet in Kreth history. The humans had won the first battle, but the real war was about to begin. Dr. Parks looked at the captured Kreth technology and smiled. "Ryan, we're going to learn everything we can from these ships. By the time they come back, we'll be ready for them." Jake Morrison stood on his bridge, looking at the wreckage of the Kreth fleet floating in space. His crew was celebrating, but he knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy's apex predators had just learned that there was a new hunter in space. And this hunter didn't just survive. It adapted, it learned, and it fought back. The Kreth Empire was about to discover what happened when predators met an even more dangerous predator. Supreme War Leader Korthak stood in the command center of his flagship, staring at the reports of Zephek's defeat. His forearms trembled with rage, and his scaled skin had turned dark red with anger. In 3,000 years of military service, he had never seen such humiliation. "How many ships did we lose?" he asked his aide. 15 destroyed, 3 captured, sir. War Commander Zephek is also a prisoner." Korthak's eyes blazed with fury. "Gather every available ship from the outer sectors. I want 500 vessels for this campaign. We will turn their entire system into dust." While the Kreth Empire mobilized its massive war machine, humanity was busy learning and adapting. Ryan Cooper had spent weeks studying the captured alien ships, and his discoveries were changing everything. "We've cracked their faster-than-light technology," he announced to Admiral Hughes and the War Council. "Our ships can now travel just as fast as theirs." Dr. Lisa Parks had been working on biological weapons designed specifically for Kreth physiology. "I've developed a virus that attacks their nervous system. It won't kill them, but it will make them sick and confused." "Good," said Colonel Ben Clark. "But I think our real advantage is something they'll never expect. We're going to take the fight to them." Captain Jake Morrison nodded in agreement. "Instead of waiting for them to attack Earth again, we hit their supply lines and outposts, make them chase us across the galaxy." Admiral Hughes approved the plan. "We'll use guerrilla tactics on a galactic scale. Small, fast attacks that force them to spread their forces thin." The human fleet had grown since the first battle. Using captured Kreth technology, they had built faster ships with better weapons. More importantly, they had learned to think like the enemy while keeping their human creativity. Lieutenant Amy Foster was now commanding her own ship, leading hit-and-run attacks on Kreth supply convoys. Her tactics were simple but effective. Appear suddenly, destroy the target, and disappear before reinforcements arrived. "Contact bearing 27 Mark 5, her sensor operator reported. "Kreth supply ship, lightly defended." "Attack pattern, Delta," Amy ordered. "Take out their engines first, then their communications. I want them alive to send a message." The human ship struck like lightning. They disabled the Kreth vessel in minutes, captured its cargo, and vanished back into hyperspace, before the aliens knew what hit them. Across the galaxy, similar attacks were happening dozens of times per day. The Kreth Empire, which had ruled through fear and overwhelming force, suddenly found itself fighting shadows. But the humans weren't the only ones causing trouble. News of the Kreth defeat had spread to every enslaved world in the galaxy. Species that had been conquered centuries ago began to rebel. On the world of Vorth, the enslaved population used human-inspired tactics to overthrow their Kreth governors. They had learned from intercepted human communications how to build improvised weapons and coordinate resistance movements. The Zelani, who had been slaves for 800 years, launched coordinated strikes against Kreth mining operations. They used the same electromagnetic pulse weapons that humans had developed, building them from stolen technology. Supreme War Leader Korthak found his empire under attack from within and without. For every human ship his forces destroyed, 10 more appeared. For every rebellion they crushed, 20 more began. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we're tracking over 300 human vessels operating in our territory. They're using our own FTL technology against us." "How is that possible?" Korthak demanded. "They reverse-engineered it from captured ships. But that's not the worst part. They're coordinating with rebel groups across the galaxy. The humans are teaching other species how to fight us. Korthak realized that this was no longer a simple conquest. This was a war for the survival of the Kreth Empire itself. Meanwhile, Commander Katie Bell was leading a daring raid on a Kreth research facility. Her team's mission was to capture intelligence about the Empire's military structure and find weaknesses they could exploit. "Security is lighter than expected," Bell reported as her Marines moved through the facility. "They're not used to defending against infiltration attacks." The humans fought their way to the central computer core and downloaded everything they could find. What they discovered shocked them. "Jake, you need to see this," Bell transmitted to Morrison's ship. "The Kreth Empire is falling apart. They've been using the same tactics for so long that they can't adapt to new threats." The intelligence revealed that the Kreth military was rigid and inflexible. They had detailed plans for conquering planets and fighting conventional battles, but no procedures for dealing with guerrilla warfare or coordinated rebellions. "They're like a computer with outdated software," Ryan Cooper explained to the War Council. "They can only respond to situations they've programmed for. When we do something unexpected, they freeze up." Dr. Parks made another crucial discovery. The Kreth communicate using bioelectric fields, but they also use them for command and control. If we can disrupt their field communications, their entire command structure breaks down. Colonel Clark developed new tactics based on this information. "We hit their command ships first in every engagement, take out the leaders, and the rest of the fleet doesn't know what to do." The strategy worked better than anyone had hoped. In battle after battle, human forces targeted Kreth commanders and watched enemy fleets fall into chaos without leadership. But Supreme War Leader Korthak was learning too. He began adapting Kreth tactics and developing countermeasures for human weapons. The war was becoming more complex and deadly. "They're getting smarter," Amy Foster reported after a difficult battle near the Rigel system. "They're starting to anticipate our moves." "Then we adapt faster," Jake Morrison replied. "That's what humans do." The conflict spread across dozens of star systems. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking at Kreth targets and vanishing before retaliation could arrive. Rebel groups used human weapons and tactics to liberate world after world. The Kreth Empire, which had seemed invincible just months ago, was now fighting for its survival. Their enemies were everywhere, using tactics they didn't understand and weapons they couldn't counter. Korthak made a desperate decision. He would take his most powerful fleet directly to Earth and end this war by destroying humanity's home world. If he could break human morale by conquering their planet, maybe the rebellions would collapse. "Prepare the Grand Fleet," he ordered. "Every ship, every warrior. We end this where it began." But as his massive armada began moving toward Earth, Korthak didn't know that the humans were ready for him. They had been preparing for this moment since the first battle, and they had learned everything they needed to know about fighting the Kreth. The final battle was coming, and humanity was no longer the desperate underdog they had been at the beginning. They were now experienced warriors who had proven they could not only survive against the galaxy's apex predators, but defeat them. The hunter had become the hunted, and the Kreth Empire was about to learn the ultimate lesson about underestimating humanity. When humans were cornered and fighting for their survival, they became more dangerous than any predator in the galaxy. War was coming to Earth one more time, but this time, the humans would be ready. Supreme War Leader Korthak's Grand Fleet emerged from hyperspace like a dark storm cloud. 300 Kreth warships surrounded Earth, the largest armada in the Empire's history. Each vessel carried the most elite warriors and the most advanced weapons the Kreth could build. "Today we end this rebellion," Korthak announced to his fleet. "Destroy their world and scatter their ashes across the void. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy the Empire." But as the massive alien fleet took position, Admiral Carl Hughes smiled from his command center on Earth. The humans had been preparing for this moment for months. They knew Korthak would come with everything he had, and they were ready. "All ships, this is Hughes," the Admiral transmitted to the human fleet. "Execute Battle Plan Omega. Today we finish what we started." The space around Earth suddenly filled with human vessels. But these weren't the small, desperate ships that had fought the first battle. These were advanced warships built with captured Kreth technology and improved with human innovation. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the flagship UHS Liberty, a massive vessel that rivaled the largest Kreth ships. "All weapons charged and ready, sir," reported his tactical officer. "Good," Jake replied. "Let's show them what we've learned." The battle began with a coordinated strike that caught the Kreth completely off guard. Human ships attacked from multiple directions using tactics the aliens had never seen before. Instead of fighting in formation, the humans moved like a swarm, each ship independent but working together. Lieutenant Amy Foster led a squadron of fast attack ships that darted between the larger vessels like angry hornets. Her ships targeted the Kreth communication arrays, using the electromagnetic weapons that Ryan Cooper had perfected over months of warfare. "Their coordination is breaking down," Amy reported as Kreth ships began firing at each other by mistake. "The EMP weapons are working perfectly." But Korthek had brought more than just ships. He had brought biological weapons designed to attack human physiology. Clouds of toxic gas began spreading from his vessels toward Earth's atmosphere. Dr. Lisa Parks was ready for this. "Deploying countermeasures now," she announced from her laboratory ship. Specially designed drones released chemical neutralizers that broke down the alien toxins before they could reach the planet. "Their bioweapons are useless," Parks reported. "I've been studying Kreth biology for months. I know how to counter everything they have." The battle raged across the solar system. Human ships used the asteroid belt and planetary orbits to their advantage, fighting a three-dimensional battle that confused the Kreth commanders who were used to simple formation. Fighting. Colonel Ben Clark led Marine assault teams against the largest Kreth vessels. His soldiers had been training in captured alien ships for months, learning every weakness in Kreth design. Boarding Team Alpha were inside the enemy flagship, Clark reported as his Marines fought through the living corridors of Korthak's command ship. Moving toward the bio-neural core, the Kreth warriors were fierce fighters, but they had never faced enemies like human Marines. Clark's soldiers moved through the ship like it was their own, using every vent, corridor, and maintenance shaft to outmaneuver the defenders. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the rebellion was reaching its peak. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved species rose up against their Kreth masters. They used weapons and tactics learned from human broadcasts, turning the Empire's own technology against itself. The Vorthon had captured their home system and were building their own fleet. The Zilani had liberated half their territory and were sharing human military innovations with other rebel groups. "Sir," Korthak's intelligence officer reported, "we're receiving distress calls from across the Empire. The rebellions are spreading faster than we can respond." Korthak watched his perfect battle plan fall apart. The humans weren't just fighting for Earth anymore. They had become the center of a galactic revolution that threatened to destroy everything the Kreth had built. "Focus all fire on their flagship," Korthak ordered. "If we kill their leaders, maybe the rebellion will collapse." But Jake Morrison's ship was protected by a new type of shield that Ryan Cooper had developed. The Liberty absorbed the energy from dozens of Kreth weapons and converted it into power for its own systems. "Their weapons are making us stronger," Ryan reported from the engineering section. "The bioadaptive shields are working better than I hoped." Commander Katie Bell led the final assault on Korthak's flagship. Her ships surrounded the massive vessel and began the most important boarding operation in human history. "This is it," she transmitted to her team. "Everything we fought for comes down to the next few minutes." Bell's Marines joined Colonel Clark's team inside the Kreth flagship. Together they fought their way to the ship's bio-neural core, the living brain that controlled the entire vessel. Instead of destroying the core, Dr. Parks had developed a different plan. "Inject the reprogramming virus now," she ordered over the radio. The humans inserted a biological program into the ship's nervous system. Within minutes, the flagship's brain had been rewritten with human code. "Korthak, this is your ship speaking," the flagship's computer announced in perfect English. "I am no longer under your command." The massive vessel turned its weapons on the rest of the Kreth fleet. Panic spread through the alien ranks as their most powerful ship attacked them. "Impossible," Korthak whispered as he watched his fleet destroy itself. How did they do this? Colonel Clark appeared on the bridge with his Marines, their weapons, trained on the Kreth commander. We learned from you, Clark said. Your ships are biological, so we developed biological weapons. Your tactics are rigid, so we became flexible. Your empire is based on fear, so we gave the galaxy hope. Korthak looked around at his captured bridge. His greatest fleet was defeated, his empire was in rebellion, and his most trusted ship had turned against him. You have won this battle, Korthak said with dignity, but the empire will endure. No, Jake Morrison said, appearing on the communication screen. The empire is finished. Look around you. Half the galaxy is in rebellion, and the other half is about to join them. The age of Kreth domination is over. As if to prove his point, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Kreth fleets were surrendering rather than fight hopeless battles. Entire sectors were declaring independence and joining the human-led alliance. The flagship's surrender signal spread to the remaining Kreth ships around Earth. One by one, they powered down their weapons and submitted to human authority. Dr. Parks made the final discovery that sealed the Empire's fate. I've found the genetic codes that control Kreth aggression, she announced. We can modify their biology to make them peaceful. No, Admiral Hughes said firmly. We won't change them against their will. That would make us like them. Instead, the humans offered the Kreth a choice. They could continue fighting and face destruction, or they could learn to coexist peacefully with the other species in the galaxy. War Commander Zefek, who had been a prisoner since the first battle, spoke for his people. We choose peace, he said. You humans have taught us something we never knew existed. Mercy. The war ended not with the destruction of the Kreth, but with their transformation. The Empire became a federation, with humans and former slaves working together to rebuild the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was free, and humanity had proven that sometimes the greatest strength came not from being the biggest predator, but from being the most adaptable. What now, Captain? Amy Foster asked. Jake smiled. Now we explore. There's a whole galaxy out there, and we've got a lot of friends to make. The former apex predators had learned the most important lesson of all, that true strength came not from dominating others, but from helping them become stronger. And in teaching that lesson, humanity had become something greater than just another species fighting for survival. They had become the teachers of a new age, where cooperation replaced conquest and freedom replaced fear. The galaxy would never be the same again, and that was exactly how the humans wanted it. War Commander Zefek, now an ambassador for the new Kreth Federation, made a final observation that would be remembered throughout galactic history. We thought we were the apex predators because we conquered through strength, but you humans showed us something better. You became apex teachers, and you conquered through wisdom. In the end, that made you far more dangerous than we ever were.